Hello, everyone. Steven Soos here, your host of Advocates with Steven Soos. I'm joined today by Bill Phillips. He is a city councilor in St. Catharines, but he's also currently the deputy mayor. Now, I have to get the sponsorships right, deputy mayor, or my sponsors will not be happy. So, this episode of Advocates is proudly sponsored by Cam Wilson, Cheryl Rowe, Leanna Villela. Thank you so much for your support. And Dave Bilsma. I got everybody, so that's great. So, Deputy Mayor, just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I've been a city councilor for going on my 20th year. Prior to that, I was an elementary school principal in St. Catharines, and so I've been on city council for 20 years and served three different mayors: Mayor McMullen, Sensic, and Cisco. And at this time, city council has selected me to be deputy mayor. Um, and I've been in that position for the last 3 years, and will serve another year before this term ends, which is almost a year away. I can't imagine where all that time has gone. It flies by, but we will be seeking re-election again next October, and that's about it. I really enjoy my role as city councilor and deputy mayor, and trying to make St. Catharines a better place every day for people to live and enjoy.
That's excellent. And I was glad to see you at the Summit for Mental Health, Homelessness, and Addiction in Thorold, representing the city of St. Catharines. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for taking the time out to do that. I hope that it was insightful for you and that you learned a lot, because we're all learning about these complex social issues. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. But the first thing I want to ask you is this: should the role of deputy mayor be elected, or maybe follow a model like Niagara on the Lake, where the city councilor who comes in first place is essentially elected deputy mayor?
First of all, I don't think in our situation a deputy mayor needs to be elected by the residents. The way that we do it is at the beginning of the first term, or early in the first term, the deputy mayor is selected by his or her colleagues on council. You put your name forward if you're interested in being the deputy mayor, and then council votes on that. And if you get more votes than anybody else, then you become the deputy mayor that way. And so you are basically the representative of council as deputy mayor. To have the position elected citywide would be very, very difficult, because, as you may be aware, in St. Catharines, you're elected based on a ward. We have 6 wards, 2 councillors per ward. If I was going to be interested in being deputy mayor and I had to run citywide, as the mayor is, it would be very difficult for a councillor or a candidate to do that, because number one, it's very expensive. Number two, the time to get elected citywide, it's a totally different campaign than what my ward campaign is. So it would be very difficult to do that. If it was a larger, and I don't know, like Toronto or something, I don't know how other cities do it. But for a city the size of St. Catharines, I don't think being elected as to have a total election for deputy mayor would work, because the role also of deputy mayor, uh, the position isn't a full-time position. Let's put it that way. As I mentioned to you, my role prior to being a councillor was as an elementary school principal. I see the deputy mayor almost being like a vice principal, if you want. I take my lead from the mayor. If he wants to discuss issues and get advice from me, then I'm at his disposal. He can phone me at any time. Or like, for instance, tonight I'm attending a dinner on his behalf, or the meeting that we had with you. He's either out of town at a conference or at meetings out of town. He's very, very busy, very active mayor. And I.
That happens to me all the time. Somebody always
Sorry.
calls me during an interview.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry about that.
thanks for that,
That was
Deputy.
my CAO. But anyways, David will have to wait, I guess. Um, so yeah. So in a case like that, if he's busy, I get a call from his executive assistant and say, "Can you cover for him for whatever?" And that's the role. So it's not it being deputy mayor in a way is a full-time job, but it's not a situation where if I had to be at City Hall from 9 to 5 every day, um, unless the role was totally changed where I'm much more active in decision making, which I really don't believe. I'm basically just a counselor with a little bit more to do. And the thing is, too, I'm kind of and sometimes a liaison between council and the mayor. If a councillor might phone me up and say, "What do you think about this bill?" And I give advice, or I can say, "Well, I'll talk to the mayor about it," or the CAO, or something like that. So that's a role too. So, but I really enjoy the position.
That's great. And there is something to be said about the current system because everyone takes turns in being the deputy mayor. So everybody's able to get their feet wet and assist City Hall in that fashion. So I, I'm I'm a guy of ideas and I like to throw it out there and maybe someone will catch it if they are inclined to do so. So
Previously, we had a situation where we tried where each counselor was deputy mayor. I used to call it deputy mayor of the month award, but so you would be deputy mayor for a month, which that's okay if you're just going to go to a dinner or open up a business or something like that, and then next month somebody else does it. But there isn't any continuation of knowledge, and so I don't feel that method works. It's better to have a permanent position and you know to do it that way. And also, I mean, if you were going to have a full-time deputy mayor, the wages would be increased significantly to what I get to be deputy mayor, and I don't think it would be worth the wage.
I appreciate that. And so moving on to our next topic, that's some great conversation. So, over the last 6 years, I have fought hard for a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. I've spoken to people like our proud sponsor, Counselor Jim Hanley and Thorold, Carmen DeRose. Wayne Campbell was involved while he was alive, and he did a phenomenal job fighting for it. Inwell and Bonnie Folkens, Claudette Richard, Jamie Lee, John Kiokio, and the list just goes on and on. Jennifer Corstangi and Grimsby. So, Deputy Mayor, my question is this. Do you think that St. Catharines Council went far enough in declaring a crisis but stopping short at declaring a state of emergency? Would you like to see a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction declared in Niagara Falls or St. Catharines?
St. Catharines
today.
Okay, it definitely is a crisis. It's and I don't know, I don't know, Stephen, and I'm not being negative when I say it could be determined as a situation of basically semantics. Is it a state of emergency? Well, some people think of a state of emergency as a climate catastrophe, like a earthquake or something like that, where you require uh, emergency people to come in, deal with the situation on a short term, and then once it's like you think of New Orleans and the hurricane situation, people come in, National Guard, fire, police. it's the whole city is under crisis, if you want, and then it goes away after the situation is dealt with. It is definitely a crisis. I agree with that, but I don't see where it's going to be ever a situation where we're going to have a short term, oh my goodness, we've got this bad situation, which we do. Uh, and we can have a group of people come in, fix it, and it's going to disappear. As a state of emergency is all the time. It's a crisis that we have to deal with, and I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know if it's ever going to go away. We're working very hard, and I give you a great deal of credit for what you're trying to do, without a doubt. You definitely are a leader in Niagara in doing this. But it's a crisis that everybody's dealing with. And I don't know how it's going to be solved. I'll be honest with you. We spend a tremendous amount of time. I know our CAO, David Oakes, he told me that probably 50% of his time is spent dealing with homeless issue in one way or another. And it has been that way for a long time. There's two issues. I don't know. So if it's a state of emergency, I don't know if it's a crisis for sure. I don't know if it's a state of emergency. That's something that our council would have to discuss and determine.
Well, I appreciate your response, and if I may give some feedback for the betterment of the community, I totally know that you stand with supporting people who are dealing with mental health, homelessness, and addiction. That part is clear. I'm not debating that. What I'm saying though is the definition legally of a state of emergency is any situation that has major proportions to life or property. So this issue is both. It fits that mold. And the state of emergency, I view it as a limitless tool because we can put our request forward to the Provincial Emergency Operations Center, and they are legally mandated to respond to our request. They cannot ignore us like we're seeing the provincial and federal government do on a lot of issues. We send them the motions and they end up in the shredder, so to speak. So the state of emergency is immediate. There's people committing suicide and overdosing in Niagara every single day. It's a catastrophe. I'm trying to prevent a whole next generation of young people from being wiped out on the issue. And so I do look at it as both because emergencies are immediate. It results in loss of life, but a crisis is chronic and can go long term. So these are the two definitions. So yes, it's both. And I would love to see St. Catharines Council debate this state of emergency because I also think it's an important tool for Indigenous reconciliation. So if you want to comment on that quick, you're welcome, or we can move on to our next topic.
I agree. I think it would be an interesting discussion with Council in St. Catharines and bring it on.
Well, Deputy Mayor, we have had Niagara Falls, Welland, Grimsby, Thorold, and Niagara Region declare the emergency. Right. If we had St. Catharines as Niagara's largest municipality backing us, that would throw a lot of weight. I was hopeful that when I got Hamilton to declare that was going to happen, and they tried some things and the public wasn't happy about the tiny homes development, but I thought that was a great idea. I mean, housing prices are soaring through the roof. People cannot afford to live anymore.
Mm-hmm. With that, and I agree with that. But as I said, I think you'd have a good chance in having that declared in City Council. But I can't speak for the other 12 people on my council, and I've been around long enough to know that I can't do that. But anyways, as I said. It'd be a very interesting discussion, and I think you stand a good chance of getting the support. The thing is with homelessness too, Stephen, is that um, to make it successful, number one, obviously we have to have those homes built, and as you know, in St. Catharines, we gave property to the region across from the Fairview Mall on Geneva Street, where there will be a building built, a transition building built, where uh, some, not all, obviously, it's not big enough for that, but some homeless people will be able to go in there and live for a period of time and hopefully get their lives straightened out so that they'll know what it takes to be, because there's going to be full-time staff there. They will learn what it takes to be successful as far, as life skills are concerned. The big thing in St. Catharines, or in anywhere,
Yeah.
is employment. I mean, you can house people in a building, but they need a focus in their life. And the big problem is employment. And in Niagara, in particular, I'll use St. Catharines as an example. We used to have 3 General Motors plants running 3 shifts a day. We had thousands of people employed there. I was told we had 16,000 people or more employed there way back when. And now we have one plant with one shift and maybe 600 people working there. We had a shipyard that was building a ship every year, and it was, again, running 2 shifts a day. We had Ferrandy Packard, we had Hayes Dana, we had Foster Wheeler, all of those. And when a young person graduated from high school, if they didn't want to pursue post-secondary education at Niagara College or Brock, they could go across the canal and get a job the next day. And those jobs were good paying jobs that would allow them to have a successful life, own a house, and have a family. Those jobs don't exist anymore. And to me, that is a tremendous problem, because as you know, they've all gone offshore. Um, so we have to find somehow, through education, with these people who are homeless, a role that they can pursue in employment, so that they can have not only a place to live, but to live comfortably. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and all these issues are interconnected: mental health, addiction, homelessness, employment, crime. You want to get people employment because a lot of people do crime for their own survival. So you want to take them away from those activities. I'm not going to sit here and say that crime will never be eliminated completely, but we can do a lot of things to try to reduce crime and prevent crime, which brings me to my next topic. Of course, you've probably seen the news about Little Lee, the victim of a violent home invasion and sexual assault in Welland. There have been a lot of articles in the paper this week about sexual assaults. So, Deputy Mayor, what can we do to better address violent crime and violent offenders in our community?
Change the code so that when people are found to commit these crimes, that number one, they're not allowed bail, that they're kept in confinement until their court case arrives, and if they are found guilty, to give them a significant sentence so that they're not allowed back into society. And we have to, our judicial system has to stop being so lenient, in my mind, in a case like that. You mentioned that. I just finished reading today's Standard just before uh, this interview, and it just sickens me to think that the person who committed this crime was, had done this before, and here, he broke into a house and accosted a 3-year-old girl. And I mean, as a parent of 4 children and a grandparent of 5, and having taught children, they're a huge part of my life. And somebody like that needs to be dealt with in the most serious way. And that person should be uh, dealt with, as I said, and put away for quite a while.
You're absolutely right. You can go and see my speech. I had some harsh words to say, but they were true words and they needed to be said. And we can't normalize this behavior in our community. This is not normal. We need to address it through, like you said, bail reform, labeling child predators as dangerous offenders, harsher sentences for these crimes, a community watch program, crime prevention by environmental design. And of course, another one of my ideas was a public sex offender registry, provincially and nationally. Deputy Mayor, would you help the community advocate to make that registry public?
Yes. But again, Stephen, and I'm saying that's a personal, that's not, I'm not sure that is within the mandate of a municipal councillor. That extends beyond our mandate. In a way, it does, and I can speak for my council this time. I'm sure that every councillor that sits around the horseshoe in St. Catharines is sickened by that, and I firmly believe that they would support something like that. I would hope they better, but this has to be done at the provincial level and at the federal level, and that's where residents have to phone their members of parliament. And I know there is people still can sign up, sign their names at the MP's office in Welland to support that. But that's the only way to do it, and there isn't. I'm sure that's what has to be done. Let's put it that way. That the public has to show their anger towards this, and this is something that the Carney government and the Ford government have to deal with.
But anger needs to turn into action, and we have to be responsible as citizens and really put in the hard work to make the politicians listen. You're totally correct. Most of these crime issues fall in the upper echelons of government, but to be a good counselor is to be a good advocate. And
Without a
we
doubt.
rely on
Yeah.
counselors' ability to speak to the region and to speak to the provincial and federal government on these issues. And
Mhm.
the cost of crime boils down to the city, right? So if someone vandalizes something or destroys property, who's responsible for cleaning it up? The city.
That's
And
right.
you have city fire services who have to respond to events like this because it is in their purview to do medical calls when EMS, is getting on their way, and then EMS usually takes over. So it's still important. And I love to hear the fact that you would push for a public sex offender registry. I think that's great. And I know I can always trust Deputy Mayor Phillips in delivering action. So my next question is around business. It's not something we've been talking about too much, but I want to start talking about it. So with business in St. Catharines, there was a partnership to educate business owners about the issues that mentally ill, addicted, and homeless in the city experience, and to bring the two sides to agreements and peace that they're going to keep the peace. So, talk a little bit about that partnership and how effective that you think it's been.
I think it's still a work in progress. I'm not sure exactly where they are with that right now. It is something that definitely needs to be done, and I know in talking with our businesses, they be, they're very willing to work to assist in a situation like that. The thing is that we have to get, the people who are living rough, who are homeless, who um, are on St. Paul Street or the affected businesses to hear their voice and find out, okay, what can you do to help us? Here's what we're going to do to try and help you. And that's basically the issue. Last night on the way home from council, I was driving down St. Paul Street. It was about 9. We finished early last night, thank goodness. That doesn't happen very often, but it was about 9 o'clock, and there was, I think I counted 5 or 6 uh, homeless people who were sitting out in front of storefronts, and it makes it difficult for those store owners to attract businesses because people don't feel comfortable in going down to St. Paul Street when um, they just, they're concerned for their safety, whether that's legit or not. In some instances, it is, without a doubt, and most it's not. So it's an issue that the businesses, and somehow they have to work. Let's put it this way: there isn't an organization of homeless people where they have a president or something like that. But it would be, we have to hear from the homeless people as to, what we can do to help them the most, and that's very important. But it's an issue that, as I say, we deal with on a regular basis, and
Absolutely. And it's everyone's responsibility to address these issues. And I feel for the people who are experiencing these issues as someone who's experienced it myself and who's come at the brink of death for experiencing these issues. And I understand the struggles of other residents and business owners. So we have to come to a happy medium here and really fight hard to make sure there's peace on both sides who are looking for peace. So my final question, Deputy Mayor, is, and I'm so glad that you came on the show. We got to do this again. But my final question is, what are some of the things this term that you're happiest about, that you're most proud of? Your work.
well, um, number one, we have a council that gets along great. We have. I'm really pleased with the way our mayor conducts a council meeting, and our council. Sometimes we don't agree with each other, but we don't take it personally. So I'm really really happy the way that council works. Um, we have a lot of new businesses that have opened up. Our mayor visits businesses every day, and he goes around, so he has a good idea of what their concerns are and what their successes are like, and then he brings that to us. We have an economic development and government relations department that are working very hard. It's our planning department is, I'm going to say, almost overwhelmed by the number of applications we're getting for businesses. We have a lot of new buildings that I'm going to say are on the books, not being built as fast as we want them to be built. But the former General Hospital site, for example, is finally, we have a developer from Kitchener who is moving forward, and we're hearing that that's going to get done quickly. So the Port Dalhousie project that Mr. Rankin is involved in is supposed to get moving forward quickly. So we just had a meeting with last night with a developer who's going to be putting up a building on Hartsel Road, and there's going to be some affordable housing units in that. We have a large building going up on Ontario Street where the former Hotel du Hospital is going in there. The developer said he's anxious to get started with a hole in the ground. And again, there's going to be quite a number of affordable housing units going in there. So we've really been pushing our developers as much as possible to include affordable housing units going into new buildings. Not all these buildings are going to have affordable housing units. We'd like to see that, but some of them aren't. But many of them are. And so we're looking, we think we're moving in the right directions. We have a lot of vacant land that site plans have been approved, but because the condo market has fallen flat right now, we're not getting them built out as fast as we would like, but hopefully in the near future that's going to change. So the big thing is, as you know, Steve, St. Catharines it doesn't have the luxury of Welland. We were in Welland yesterday, and I couldn't believe the expansion that's going on in Welland and Niagara Falls and Thorold. We can't expand outwards. We have to expand upwards, and that makes it much more difficult because it's much more expensive. So, but we've had a lot of developers show interest in building large buildings, and hopefully that's going to happen soon. Our Performing Arts Center, Meridian Center are busy, and I think the dry docks, the Heddle Dry Docks, Ontario Dry Dock, they've been working very hard trying to get contracts to build offshore vessels for the Navy or the Coast Guard. Hopefully that's going to be successful too. That's a great company down there. They're working very hard. So it's our recreation department we've spent a lot of money improving our parks this year. We put a new splash pad in, and the goal has been to put a splash pad in every ward. So we're almost there, and our park improvements have been substantial. Probably our parks have shown more improvement this year than they have in the last 20 years. So that's about it.
That's great. Those are great updates. I learned a lot about parks during my short time on the accessibility committee as chair. So I was happy to learn about AODA standards and all that kind of stuff. But see, with development, I think it needs to be responsible, right? So with the development issue, they want to put some politicians want to put a large amount of money into development, but a lot through CIPs, which no cash is exchanged through a CIP. But we're looking at we could be looking at like a 30-year period until we get a decent return on investment. So how can we expedite the return on investment for development projects?
That's a really good question. I guess basically is that when the site plan is approved, we tell developers, okay, if you've been awarded CIP based on the formula that we have, for example, to allow CIP to be paid, to tell the developers, okay, you have X number of months or years to get a shovel in the ground. And if you don't get that shovel in the ground, then your CIP is revoked. So you can't buy a piece of property and hope that things are going to work out and sit on it for 5 years. And then all of a sudden, it doesn't happen. And the CIP hangs on for a long time because that CIP is money that we expect is going to be garnered in some way. But you can't wait forever. So I guess the best way to do it is for us, to have a timeline and say, okay, you are going to be awarded the CIP, but if you don't get started within, I'll pick a number, 2 years. If you don't have a shovel in the ground in 2 years, then you will have to reapply for it at another time. And then the CIP, excuse me, could be changed or whatever. There might not be money available. Who knows? But just that's the whole thing, is to push it.
Thank you for that. For the viewers, CIP is Community Improvement Project. That's what we're talking about. So
Yes,
I just want
right.
to make sure that people know. Well, Deputy Mayor, that's the end of our segment for now. I'll have you back on the show to talk about some other issues like Indigenous reconciliation. I think we should dedicate way more respect and time to that issue. So we will have you back on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Advocates with Steven Soos. Our guest today, Deputy Mayor Bill Phillips, St. Catharines. Thanks for being on the show today, Deputy Mayor.
Thanks for having me, Stephen. Best of luck. Take
All
care.
right, no problem. You take care.
Bye.